Back to a Celtic State of Mind. I am Paul John Dykes, and I genuinely mean this. I am delighted to be joined by John Paul Mason. We've not had a chance, really, JP, to talk about the weekend that we've just had and the weekend that's about to be upon us. What about that at the weekend then, JP? Talk us through it. Talk us through. I mean, I've been listening to your commentary. It was tremendous.
I've not listened to any.
Superlative. It was superb. And no, you've got to listen to it back, JP. It was brilliant. It was great. The crack between you and James. And I'm going to start off with something positive. Brendan Rodgers was talking on Celtic TV. I was saying this morning, and he was speaking about the candy. He was speaking about the Roch, and he said that they are true Celtic people that love the club. I could feel that he was talking for the heart in that interview. There was nothing PR related. It was true Brendan Rodgers emotion, wasn't it?
I think a lot of people are desperate for it not to be. You know, like there's a lot of cynicism around Brendan Rodgers, and I suppose the history that he carries with him, and obviously the departure, the return. But people will be like, "Oh, you've been sucked in," or anything like that. But I don't really buy that. I think he genuinely did enjoy that. I don't think you can really fake that. I think you're either in the moment and you're enjoying it, and you're giving people your time, and everybody that you've heard talking about it, the posts on Twitter, Jerry talking about it to you on Monday. I think it was a genuine thing, and it was, as we were commentating. I mean, I say commentating. we're just talking between ourselves. The football match going on. There was the occasional attempt at commentary, but I don't really know. I mean, James has done it before. Great guy, James. Actually, that was the first time we've met in person, which is surreal. But yeah, really, really good guy. But I think the actual significance of him coming to that game will be remembered in a long time, like probably when we're gone. It's that big a deal. Yeah. It's a centenary celebration of St Roch's, who provided Celtic with Jimmy McGrory, and the links between the two clubs are you cannot deny them. It's not as if they're made up or fabricated or anything. It's a real thing. And the current Celtic manager, who has already got several trophies to his name, 7, I think, in total.
That's a relevant number today, actually. Yeah. 7.
So seven trophies to his name. Actually turns up to that game, and I felt a little bit disappointed in myself for not being a little bit more poignant with my words, because I genuinely do think now, reflecting back on it, that how big a deal it actually was. Mm-hmm. And seeing him just arrive, obviously you're in the moment, and it didn't feel real. We spoke about that at the time when we were standing there on that platform going, Brendan Rodgers is here, and he's talking to Saul from James. What's going on? But it was a really, really incredible event to be a part of, and absolutely massive credit to yourself and everybody at the club and clubs that put it together, and seeing guys that I grew up watching on telly playing in front of me for Celtic and actually saying their names. And James was like, "You're going to need to keep me right in these guys, because I don't know them all." And I'm like, "I know them all because I watched them all play for Celtic." Pretty much.
That was the era of me growing up as well. I mean, I put a few posts out, JP, because it is something to be celebrated. I make a joke in that about name dropping and all that kind of stuff, but it is tongue in cheek, because I'm like a wee boy. I get transported back to being the wee guy, buying Panini Celtic stickers and absolutely obsessed and writing to these players. So many guys, I won't admit it to them, but I wrote to them when I was a Celtic fan, and there they are, playing for a select that we were able to pull together. But as you say, there were so many people who were part of it. Everybody from the DJ, Big Slim, right down to the kit and the attention to detail. And I've got to say, the idea to wear the Shamrock jersey came from Stevie Mullen. who used to appear on Acsom on a regular basis and came back for a couple of special shows when we took a wander around Paradise. He came up with the idea. And obviously, the linkage is to James McGrory's last game as the manager of Celtic in 1965. And we wore that brilliant shamrock strip on that particular occasion against Kilmarnock, who was a team that Jimmy McGrory had managed previously prior to coming to Celtic as the gaffer. So all tied in, but then the attention to detail from Jim Simonetti at the Jimmy Johnson Academy to get the match embroidery done, and then the training jackets and the warm-up T-shirts and everything about it was painstakingly planned and thorough. And then it happens, and then you're starting to think to yourself, going into Glasgow, right, I hope all the guys turn up. I hope all the players turn up. And then you go into the car park and you're counting them, you're going, wow. And then it was wee Skippy, Scott McDonald, who didn't make it to the car park that was the kind of designated meeting space. But I got a message from him saying, I'm just going to go up to the park. And you're like, wow, this is just, it's happening. It's actually happening. Then you go up to the park and it's like, right, I need to see JP, I need to see James. All the little bits all falling into place. And then it happens. And then the final bit, of course, was Brendan. And I didn't actually believe it was going to happen until I saw those beautiful Louis Vuitton trainers making their way out of that blacked out vehicle. And from there, it was a bit surreal. I know that's an overused word in these circumstances, JP, but it was a bit surreal. But I go back to the comment that was made by Tommy Burns. Frank McAvenny tells the story when Burns was given the actual base of the Scottish Cup, you know, the big heavy wooden bit with all the wee plaques on it, and he was sitting around it with the Nike. Remember the Nike football boots that Tommy Burns used to wear with the kind of neon yellow swoosh? And he was just sitting up at the corner flag with a base. He was taking it all in. He had given his speech to Jim White. They're there and they're always there. And he was just taking it all in. And Neely Mockin was told to go and get the base. And McAvenny was walking up with Neely, and Tommy was in tears. And he said, Mackie, you don't understand. They'll be talking about it in 100 years. That always stayed with me, right? Because 35 years later, JP, we are talking about the centenary year. And it'll be the same, not only with the Roch history, but with Celtic history. You look back on all these events in the past. For example, something very, very small in Celtic's history. They went to open or play the first game at Central Park in Cowdenbeath under the floodlights. 1968, I think it was. You can check the wiki, it'll be on there. But that team group, you know, the guys who were in that team, they are basically part of folklore now. And it's the same with regards to even wee things. Mike Galloway's benefit game, Robbie Coltrane's in the crowd. You remember all these wee details. The St. Roch centenary game, Brendan Rodgers was there. He was in the dugout. And that'll live with us forever. It's now part of the fabric of the history, JP. Very special.
All those wee kids that were getting pictures with him and everything and talking to him and all sort of huddling around the dugout, they were the lucky part of how many tickets were there? 800, 1,000, something like that.
There was about 1,000 in the stadium, yeah.
Yeah, they were the lucky people to get in. So those little kids in 35, 40 years' time, I don't even want to think about that given our age, but they'll speak to people and be like, I was there that day. And the folk will be like, no way, you were there. And I'm like, aye, I've got pictures with Brendan Rodgers, and that's just at this point in time in Brendan Rodgers' Celtic career. There's a lot of chapters, I think, still to be written in his career, and from the way that he's talking and the way that he talked over the weekend and in recent interviews as well, I think he's very keen to add to the story of Brendan Rodgers at Celtic, which I'm keen for him to add to that story as well.
You're right. I mean, it's all about the legacy, I think, right? But as you say, there's a cynicism around some who are. I've seen some of the comments, and you know, when it comes to negativity, GP, I tend to just sidestep the negative comments on social media. But I did see some cynical comments saying things like, it's all PR and all this kind of stuff, playing you like a fiddle. This is a man who flew in from a break. He was having a break over in Spain. He's flew in. It looked as though he'd flown straight in, got picked up at the airport and came to the stadium, came to the park, did what he did, and then went on his way to prepare for this weekend's game that we're going to be talking about. Guys like Saul Davis from James flew in from Portugal, played the game, JP, And then he spent a bit of time with us after the game, and then he jumped in his car and he drove to Ipswich, which I think is about a 9-hour drive, to master a record. You know, so these people were giving you the time and giving you all that for nothing, by the way. They were doing it just because they wanted to be part of the day and of the celebration. So, yes, we have been banging on about it. It is Thursday. We're still talking about it. But such is the nature of the experience. And I'll tell you what, it's up there with my best experiences as a Celtic fan, JP. It's right up there.
No wonder. Absolutely no wonder. And like I said, it's something that you could be massively proud of being a part of, because as a good friend of mine once said, while I'm alive, I'll make tiny changes to Earth. And you made a tiny change to Earth. You were part of a collective of people that made a tiny change to Earth. You could have just, everybody at the club at St Roch's could have just went, well, we've missed the boat. 2020 was horrendous, and that was the year that it should have happened, and therefore it shouldn't happen in the future. And I'm so glad that they didn't give up on that, and they did pursue it, because 2020 robbed us of a lot of things. And if there's an opportunity at some point to right the wrongs of that year and do things that you should have done that year, whether it's tiny wee things or massive things like Sunday, then they should every effort should be made to make them happen, so that people can have that moment, that enjoyment, and make that mark in history, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant words, by the way. Brendan Rodgers, his legacy. Some might have said that it was previously tainted by the way he left the club. He's building it. I said at the beginning of the season when Brendan was appointed that success will turn everybody's view around. It will. Winning games, going to Ibrox, winning games, bringing in trophies to the trophy cabinet. That's what's going to change everybody's view. But these small things, and I say small, they were massive to us, absolutely huge to us, are going some way as well to turn everybody's view around. And his legacy, I think, whenever the day comes that Brendan Rodgers leaves this football club, his legacy will be intact. And I think that's important. We're going to talk, obviously, about this weekend, all the different dilemmas that might be facing the gaffer with the starting 11. But before I do that, JP, over your right shoulder is a football jersey. Tell me a wee bit about it. I just can't help myself. If you've got a football jersey hanging up behind you, JP, it's like a moth to a flame. I'm going to have to ask about it.
Well, I've put it up before. It's the FC Palestina top. That's like a fan-made top that you can buy online. And without going too far into everything that's going on over there, which is atrocious, I did mention before that I'd been there and been to Jerusalem, been to Bethlehem. I've not been to Gaza. I've been to Tel Aviv. So I've seen the contrast in the living conditions. And for anybody that wants to know more about the situation, just read the Balfour Declaration and the Balfour Agreement, and ask yourself if those words are being held true, because they're definitely not. And it's horrendous to watch things happening on both sides over there, and it's been going on for far too long. And they know the only solution, and everybody knows the only solution. And unfortunately, nobody's willing to actually get around the table and do it. And that is to strike a deal that is in favour of everybody. And I don't know how they do it, but there's better minds than us should be able to do what needs to be done to stop innocent people dying every single day.
Yeah. I heard, many of you will have heard Patrick Keelty's words on the Late Late Show last week, and they were poignant, I felt. And obviously tying into that a wee bit, JP, again, yes, it's a wee bit about the game at the weekend, but we did get the opportunity to play a brilliant song instead of the Champions League music, and it was the James song, Many Faces, and the words are, there's only one human race, many faces, everybody belongs here. Now, simple words, but they mean a hell of a lot. It was quite funny this morning that we put the blog out. I think it was last night we put it out, because I wasn't aware of that. So I'm a James fan, right? But not to the point where I'm queuing up outside Our Price for their new releases these days. I'll get round to it. This is the thing. I've become a lazy music fan.
Back and a half. Our Price.
I used to queue up for the Oasis singles before going to college. It was actually go in and get the single, queue up. How bizarre! The kids of today don't know they're alive. But with the modern technology, it's probably made me a wee bit lazy. So I know that if a band releases a song, I've seen myself going and downloading 3 albums at a time, JP, from one of my favourite bands. So I've just never, unless I'm going to go and see them live, I tend to just get round to filling up my discography. So I hadn't heard that album that it was on, but I tell the story that because I was in the presence of our former gaffer, Gordon Strachan, for a live event, he played me the song, told me the background of it, told me the nature of it. And he, of course, is big pals with Tim Booth. You tagged Tim Booth this morning in that blog, and he obviously shared it as well. So we're spreading the word of world peace via the power of Acsom as well.
I just wanted him to read it just so that he knew that it would happen. I mean, he's quite an active guy online, so I thought there's maybe a chance that he would read it, and well, I would imagine he has. If he's reposted it, he must have read it, so that's good enough.
Yeah, I think he would need to be careful in his position to make sure he wasn't reposting something that might be controversial. The chances are he has gone in and read it. Have you met Tim Booth? Is that one of the musicians you have met over the years?
Reluctant to say yes, but I did when I was 18. I think I told the story before, but my first AAA backstage access to a gig was through a guy I worked for in a pub restaurant in West Lothian, and he knew James because they had a recording studio in Dollar, and they used to go in. He had the Strathallan Hotel. He ran that, and they used to come in for dinner and drinks and stuff like that. So he put me in touch with Saul, and I was really gutted not to actually get to say hello to Saul on Sunday. Obviously, you can't really do that while you're commentating on a game, and I had to dash after the game had finished, and we'd finished doing our duties. So I didn't get a chance to see him. I haven't seen Saul. Let me just make this clear. I haven't seen Saul since 1998. Right. So quite a lot of water has flowed under many bridges, but the company that put that gig on is now the company that I work for. So it's quite a full circle moment. So it would have been good. But Tim, I did meet Tim Booth briefly and had some chat with him about Manchester, and he offered me and my friend, we asked for a bottle of water, and he was like, well, you can have water or you can have any of that's on the table behind you. And we looked behind us, and there was just a full table full of like snacks and bottles of this, bottles of that, and 2 ice buckets either side of Stella Artois. And bearing in mind we'd been down the front, a sweaty mess, watching the gig, and then we got like ice cold bottles of beer after the gig. It was class. So
brilliant. I love these tales, JP. I mean,
like that's through a guy I worked for, and a completely happenstance accident that I happened to work for that guy. He could have known any band in the world, and it happened to be that he knew James. And I'd put Born of Frustration on in the jukebox, and that's why the conversation came up. So while we were playing pool after a shift, so it was very, very organic, and I still very much appreciate that from him to this day, because it was an early insight into what happens behind the scenes after a gig, seeing a band relax after a gig and chill out, and we spoke to Saul for a good while after it, because Tim left. Tim was only about for about 10-15 minutes, and then he left, and it was just the rest of the band. Don't think Tim really likes the whole everybody on top of him after a gig type thing. So but Saul was sound, so it was wild to see him I've seen him on stage but a bunch of times since then, but it was wild to see him in a retro Celtic kit playing for Celtic.
It's brilliant. I love every moment, and of course he took the jersey away as a wee memento. We're talking music, but you know what? Music is entwined with Celtic and supporting Celtic. We're going to be touching on a couple of anniversaries today. One of them is the 7-1 anniversary. 66 years ago, we beat Rangers 7-1 in the League Cup final. We'll be chatting about that. And 42 years ago, Johnny Doyle tragically passed away at the age of 30 after an accident in his house. And both of those occasions are marked by music. You know, you can think of the Hampden in the Sun song for the 7-1 game. And I remember, and you'll remember what I'm going to say here, JP. I remember going to the Falkirk Market, who used to sell brilliant records, tapes, and football jerseys. And I bought a 7-inch Johnny Doyle and I've no idea where it's gone. But it was a Johnny Doyle song on 7-inch, and I got that at the old it was behind the old coasters, wasn't it? The ice rink at Falkirk, and the market in there. I also bought the Anfield rap and the Celtic rap, among other tapes and records.
Do you remember the fad in the late 80s, early 90s of jeans with like cartoon characters on them and stuff like that? Like,
yeah, like Freddie Flintstone and all that.
Flintstone jeans. Aye.
Did you ever pair, JP? Did you ever pair?
I didn't have Flintstone ones. I had ones with like patches on them. They were called IOU. They weren't from the. I did get jeans from Falkirk Market, but I got these from a trendy shop in Falkirk called Matt Clothing. It was where I used to always drag my mum to take me to get like Travel Fox stuff or Benzini stuff or Chippy stuff. Like basically any of that gear, that tackle, I would be after.
Just visualising the famous Travel Fox trainers, you know, the white ones with the green and the red.
Yeah.
Sought after at the time and now an extreme rarity. So yeah, the point there was all about the fact that music is intertwined with the history of Celtic. Almost every occasion has a song. And we will be talking about both of those anniversaries. It's quite incredible to consider that Johnny Doyle, 42 years ago now, remembered for being a fan in a jersey, a successful player for Celtic. And, you know, with regards to his history, when you read the book, which I would recommend, written by Paul McQuaid, you realise just how much of a dream of his it was to play for the club. Now, Jungle Lion, you are coming in because on this day 2 weeks ago, and I think it's only fair because you were posting up brilliant pictures of a nice cold pint of lager on the beach. You were watching Acsom on a beach in Fuerteventura, and now you'll be watching it in Ireland. And if it's anything like Scotland, it will be very, very windy and wet as well. Now, double denim. On a separate note, I loved Brendan's comments on the St. Roch's game. Came across as a very genuine and humble top man. And I do think that. I think there's been a period of reflection, JP. It's got to be tough to be in the public eye so much, you know, to the point where everything you say is poured over by guys like us and also the press and everything. Every single word that comes out your mouth, every way you react and act to a situation, the clothes you wear, the way you look, everything is under the microscope. And I do think that there is a bit of a reparation of the legacy going on here, which will be topped off with the first trophy, second time round for Brendan. He's spoken about European endeavours and ambitions. We're going to be talking also about the doubleheader with Atletico Madrid, which is coming up. JP, now, sorry, on you go.
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I was not going to say anything at all.
I thought you were just about to lead into something. Maybe it was just a wee tease. Or, indeed, it could well be, obviously, the creaks and cranks of the new studio, which is still grey. And I thought just to celebrate that, I'd wear a grey jumper as well, just to add into that and make myself look a little bit less grey around the cheeks. Paddy Lavery, is Tilio a real person or a figment of someone's imagination? You asked the question, of course, because we are asking whether or not Luis Palma will start for Brendan Rodgers against Hearts. Let's start with the Hearts game then, JP. We're going into that. There's a few things to discuss. The first one, of course, is the starting lineup. But before we get to that, let's talk about fans. Let's talk about allocation of tickets and also a few posts, etc., that were doing the rounds yesterday and a few blogs this morning around the Green Brigade's relationship with the club. So we'll start off with the allocation. It's not right, is it? Just to get under 600 tickets for Tynecastle. That's poor.
Well, I mean, it's just slowly whittled down to that amount, isn't it? I mean, it was what, double that before. We got maybe half of that stand, and then now we're getting half of the stand, a quarter of the stand. Is that what it is? And then I think I was listening to Scott McCorry from the Homeboys does a room 1-on-1 with a fan from another club. In the lead up to the game against that club at the weekend, and he did one with a Hearts fan. A Hearts fan, by the way, who said that when he was younger, he was bullied into being a Rangers fan by his dad, even though he didn't want to be a Rangers fan. His dad would take him to Hearts games and make him wear a Rangers strip to Hearts games.
How many fans have been bullied into supporting Rangers by their old man? Probably quite a few.
Yeah, aye. So it was an interesting listen anyway. You can check it out. But he was sort of saying that because of security reasons, obviously they can't give us the full bit because they're going to cover up some of the seats with advertising or something because we'd be too close to the Hearts, the rival Hearts fans. This is a nonsense when if security is becoming a consideration, then surely to God that you need to relook at things with regards to Celtic fans' safety in that stadium because I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but I would like to think we go there and do the business, but we know that it's going to be a tough game. But say we do go there and do the business, and it is a rub in their face in it job. I mean, the safety of the Celtic fans, if there's only 550 there, they're quite vulnerable to the hardcore element, shall we say, of the Hearts sport. And it's just been the way that it's been all my life, and then suddenly it's changed, and it's changing across many grounds now as opposed to just one. To the point that I mean, I don't see myself getting to go back to Tynecastle for a league game anytime soon, and exactly the same for Ibrox. And how is that fair for someone that's supported and paid money to support a club for almost my entire life since I was 18, bar 4 years? I'll give you that. There was a 4-year barren spell where I didn't have a season ticket, so therefore I couldn't get tickets I wouldn't even think about getting a ticket for a away game when I'm not a season ticket holder. But how is that fair? Like to just be like, all right, we know you've been coming for the last 25 years, but we're just going to we've changed our mind now. But the only thing is with the Hearts is as long as they're selling out their ground, there is an argument there that they can put forward where they're like, well, our demand's increased. We don't have to give you these tickets, but I think the authorities need to intervene and make some sort of minimum cap because 550 fans in a 20,000 capacity stadium seems a little bit measly or meagre. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I totally agree with it. And I think we were talking the other week, JP, about how to manage it because the demand obviously isn't always there with certain clubs, but certainly with Celtic, it's been a discussion point for at least the 3 years we've been doing the live streams beyond the pandemic, of course, whereby we were looking at some clubs where I thought on a business level we're making the right decision. And it wasn't because I'm so focused on Celtic. They were making the right decision to allow more Celtic fans into their stadium. Livingston, for example, I know St Johnstone had done it in the past as well. But then other clubs you were looking at it and they weren't selling it out. That's where it becomes bizarre for me, where they weren't giving you the tickets, but then they were failing to sell them. And of course, Hearts are looking after themselves. They made that pretty clear. But yeah, I do think it comes down to the safety aspect. That was the reason why we knocked back the Ibrox tickets. How many more stadiums would we do that with as well? Because you do want as many, and I'm pretty sure Brendan Rodgers and the players want as many Celtic fans in the stadium as possible, right? And again, the problem I've got with it is that the away day is a brilliant part of being a Scottish football fan. I don't know, I can't speak for fans in Portugal, Italy, England, or anywhere else, but I know how passionate the away support is for Celtic, and it's almost as if it's diminishing and it's been taken away from the football fan. In the past, they've had to come up against the authorities and the police and the Act and all this kind of stuff. And now it's the clubs themselves who are kind of turning the screw. I'm bringing this up because I do remember the tartan jeans, and there might be a picture of me wearing a pair of them somewhere for a while. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
Full tartan.
Tartan jeans, man. Yeah,
not tartan patches, full tartan.
Full tartan.
Oof.
Top to toe. Full tartan. The full booner, yeah, wow. And I think they were purchased in Falkirk as well. There you go. It wasn't that long ago. It's quite embarrassing even thinking back.
See, just on the tick.
I'm wearing them now.
Back to that as well. I know that it's now not a distant memory because it's still very much in my mind. I've not forgotten it, but not having the ability to go to any football game at all for 16 months.
Yeah.
As a fan who's been going for 20 odd years or whatever, right? That sort of lack of games over that time made everyone who goes to games, made that everyone's appetite increase for when they returned. Everyone was so desperate to get back, and you're I think it's the same with gigs as well. And not to how dare I mention music, but the demand for gig tickets is mental just now, right? And it doesn't show any signs of abating, because, I mean, a few years ago, for example, Shania Twain sold one night at the Hydro. She comes back and sells 3, right? And there's other things like Liam Gallagher tickets go on sale today or tomorrow. I think it is. He's doing 2 nights at the Hydro. I already know that the demand for them is through the roof. And maybe you could say it would have been the same, in the years leading up to the pandemic or whatever, but I just think there's a bigger demand. And there's a bigger demand from the Celtic support because we didn't get it for 16 months. We didn't get the opportunity to support our team. And that's a long time to not be able to do it. So then all these individual circumstances, like Tynecastle away, like Ibrox away, you're robbing people of moments in their lives. And people will be like, oh, get a life, you need to do more than football. But I'm sorry, but that's a big part of my life. It's a big part of thousands of people's lives.
Absolutely.
And that's what they choose to do for enjoyment. And an away day is a huge, huge part of that, because you get to spend time with people. You're people sitting on their own in their flats or houses working from home, and then they want social interaction. That's an opportunity to have social interaction. And then obviously then people go, oh, we'll just go and watch in a pub. It's not the same. You and I both know it's not the same gathering together. It's about the journey to the game. It's about going to a pub in Edinburgh or wherever before the game. It's about the live experience of watching.
The routine even, JP, just the routine of having that in your week, and for that to be whisked away from you.
Yeah.
You make a great point, right? Because I know there were 2 completely different scenarios, right? But I do remember during the pandemic, people saying that this is the biggest hit that the public have taken since the last World War. Now, if you look at the attendance boom after World War II, it went through the roof, JP, and it was probably for the same reasons that you've mentioned, that lack of community that they were experiencing during that period where they couldn't, after a hard week's graft, go and have a few bevies with their mates and go to the game and everything that entails. There was a massive boom in attendances after, the football resumed, and then it started tailing off a bit. We're still in that boom period after the pandemic. You're right. People do want to go and see the bands, and they want to go and see their football team, and it's been taken away. And that isn't even a consideration. The wedding that I was at a couple of months ago, I spoke about it in the villages, and I met a lot of old Celtic fans who I would travel through with on various buses from the 5 villages. And a couple of the guys that I spoke to said that they were at the end of their tether, JP, because for 40 years, twice a week, this was part of their life. And then it was taken away, and it really affected them mentally, because they didn't have that release, that opportunity to express themselves for 90 minutes, the lead up, and then obviously the celebration afterwards. They just couldn't adapt to life without it. People do think, JP, if you're not part of it, what are you talking about? But it's true. It is absolutely true.
My old CSC in Edinburgh got 1 ticket for Hearts on Sunday. 1. I mean, they're going to. I mean, I know it's an Edinburgh-based supporters club, but imagine if it was not Edinburgh-based, and so we're going to run a bus for 1 person. It's just.
The whip room's not going to be great for the driver, is it? And I've seen a lot of the CSCs rather saying, listen, we need to buddy up with the buses because, as you say, that one might have 1, that one might have 3. It's just, it needs dealt with. The life's blood of the game. You need to go back to Jock Stein's comments all those years ago, and they were so pertinent to what we're facing right now. Jungle Lion, Johnny Doyle Day, yes, we will be having a wee chat about that as well. Memories of Johnny Doyle, let us know in the comments section. I've been privileged enough to speak to some of his teammates who tell me stories about Johnny. A right character behind the scenes, used to really get stuck in about all the ground staff guys as well. He used to wear the big sovereign rings, the sovies, and he had this thing where he would rub them into the wee, the bit of your head there, JP, if you were giving him cheek or you never washed his boots properly. But a popular character on the terrace as well. Kevin Mullen, afternoon Acsom, Palma is going to be one of those players that gets you off your seat, definitely going to become a fan's favourite. It looks like that. And we'll be having a look at the possibility of the starting 11 as well. And Ewan Boy Martin, first day back at work today. And it's miserable, says Ewan. Thank God Celtic are back playing at the weekend. That's what we're talking about, JP. It gives you something to look forward to at the end of the week. And it isn't the same in a boozer. It's not the same watching it on your phone. I've got to admit, when did it kick off? It was March 2019, right? And then the games were basically postponed for the rest of the season, JP. We started live streaming when the football kicked off again. Everybody was locked down. And because the live stream had obviously built an audience, which we're talking to right now, and a community. And I don't say that lightly. There's a community within the Acsom sphere, JP, because you notice it when you go to these events like St. Roch's, and people come up and talk to you about their own experiences and how they were introduced to Acsom, and a great many of them say it was during the pandemic. So I'm totally alive to all of that kind of stuff. But what I did, I didn't give up my season ticket, JP, but because the games have to be covered now, because that is part of our routine and part of our schedule, I've not been going to as many games, obviously. Quite frankly, you can look through all the match days and I'm on just about all of them. And you do miss it. You do miss it because obviously with your old fella, there's that turning of the role reversal. He used to take you to the game. You want to start taking him to the game. So he's still going, but I'm not going at the moment. And obviously we need to turn that around as well. Probably get everybody that's living abroad on the Acsom team to cover the games, JP, so that I can start going back to them more regularly, because you do miss it. There's nothing quite like it, is there? And that's again why music and football goes hand in hand, because you get the same kind of emotion at gigs, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you couldn't hold me back from the moment that the doors were opened to both. I was desperate to go to one, as many gigs as I could, work as many gigs as I could, and two, go to as many football matches as I could, whether it was home or away, or even elsewhere. If there was a weekend where Celtic weren't playing, going to B team games and things like that. I've done that as well. Gone down south for a couple of games, trying to
James
increase.
McCarthy for a second, couple of games.
A couple of games. I've got my football ground map that I fill in. So I've got 65 grounds visited worldwide. I mean, worldwide. I've not been that far around the world, but I've been to 65 grounds. It's a really cool thing to do if you're.
Is that bored, online, JP?
Yeah, if you're bored of an evening, just go to it's my football ground. My football ground map. Just put that in, and you can set up your own account, and basically gives you like a map, and you can see all the little pins of all the stadiums you've been to. So 65. Going for 100. That's my aim. If I get to 100, I'll be happy. And they're not all glamorous grounds. I might add. There's still a lot of Scottish grounds I've not been to.
That's the beauty of it. And knowing you as I do, JP, you'll have a document in most of these visits. You'll have either a photograph or a ticket stub or programme. You'll have something, won't you?
Yeah, definitely. Like, for example, the James McGrory Park, I added that to my list. That I had never been there before, so that became ground 65 on Sunday. And I look forward to adding one to make 66. So.
Brilliant. And by the way, another wee point, I do read through the comments, obviously, in the YouTube after the event as well, if you can't watch it live. And someone mentioned during the live stream that there were pockets of kind of space within James McGrory Park. But, the attendance, the capacity was set based on, the safety aspect of it as well, because we could have sold double the tickets quite easily. In fact, I think you could have sold 3 or 4 times the amount of tickets. Such was the demand. Right up until the actual match day, I was getting messages asking if I had any tickets, to the point where I joked to the St. Roch's guys that I was going to forge a few, but I didn't. JP, obviously, I didn't start selling them on the black market. Martin Davey, the commentators on St. Roch's Century game were brilliant, guys.
Right.
I'm just going to double check. How many people have tuned into that? Let's have a wee look.
I don't want to know. I've genuinely not looked at the comments. It's bad enough looking back at the live chat and here after you've done a show and you just see people calling you JP the most boring guy in Celtic podcast world and stuff like that, and finishing off a hail hail when you're like, all right, cheers, mate.
Aye.
Thanks for that. But no, I've if anybody said anything nice, thank you. For the people that I'm sure have said the not so nice things, maybe get a life.
I've not seen any real negativity. I'm going to be totally honest with you.
Oh,
but
I'm glad about that.
I'm going to say though, over 28,000 have tuned into the game. Astonishing.
That's the reason why I'm thinking there's going to be a higher chance of negativity. If there's 28,000 people watching something, then you've got to think the odds on everybody enjoying what you've said or not said. Yeah, there's going to be a percentage where, and I don't really want to see that, to be honest, because it's not nice reading negative things about you.
No.
I come on here for an hour every week to chat to you. I'm not trying to get a job for Sky. I'm not trying to get a job with Celtic. It's purely because we started this.
Love of the club. I know.
And I love talking to you about Celtic. So that's it. It's not.
See, the thing on a kind of selfish level as well, JP. And it goes back to like all my lifelong mates. If I didn't have this on a Thursday in the diary, you and I probably wouldn't speak. Like me and my mates wouldn't speak for weeks, sometimes months on end. Which, by the way, when you get older, it's just a natural thing because you're that busy with work, family life, and all that kind of stuff. So I love the fact that on a 12:30 on a Thursday, you and I can catch up once a week. It's our version of going for a coffee or a pint because obviously we're that busy we can't do it physically all that often. Although at the Chris Sutton night, and by the way, anybody who went to that night who were in the VIP section, got the photograph taken, all the images are on the website, acsom.net. The gallery is on there. And I'm sending out tonight an email to everybody who bought the tickets so you can go and download your images. But on that night, Aldo, who you'll see, Aldo official on the socials, coming in, says that he does love the Thursday bulletin, JP, and he wants to meet us for a catch-up, a coffee, a pint, whatever it might be, and talk football, music. I'm all over that. We'll definitely get that one in the diary as well. And this is refreshing because you just get the sense that everywhere else in the world is sunning it up. Portugal is also wet and windy today, says Irishman in Porto. Now, Stevie Kenny makes a decent point. Nearly Mockin Jr. on this day of all days, 7-1 anniversary, nearly scored 2 that day. He does run a shop in Falkirk, and you get all your designer gear in there as well. He had a couple of shops, one across the road, I think. Mike, it was politics, JP. Certain brands would only exist in the world of certain brands.
No, so if you want, right, so if you know Falkirk, it's a street. It's a Cow Wind. It's where Sleeves used to be, the record shop, which was a great record shop. But then there was Matt, and then there's something. I think it was maybe called like Pacifico or something like that. They were right opposite each other. Both best of gear shops that you could get all your cool clothes in, which I would always drag my mum to, and my mum would just be appalled at the prices of things, which I'm sure she would be appalled at the prices of things now even more. Stone Island stuff's just eye-watering, isn't it? It's like that's probably what it sells now, but you do look like you're getting a passport photograph. To be fair.
I do. But talking to I always remember going up to, I think it was maybe in George Street, is where you used to buy that gear in the 90s, and the stuff was on display without the badges. You had to get the badge once you'd bought it, and there was a wee box under the counter. We'd get it because we were getting nicked all the time. That was back in the day. God knows what the story is and where you buy it now. I'm kind of off the radar when it comes to fashion, as you might have noticed. Rob Lilly, have you ever been to Sleep? That's not there anymore, is it?
Oh, I know. I
used to buy the tickets for gigs and Sleeves.
Was there one in Dunfermline as well, or am I wrong about that?
There wasn't a Sleeves. There was a record shop called Hits, and the sign was made up of CDs pinned to a black wood. Hits, yeah. They probably had a Z instead of an S because obviously that's the kind of thing that shop fronts do. And you and Boy Martin looking very grey today. Listen, ladies and gents, I will add a bit of colour to this.
A work in progress.
It's a work in progress. It is. Yes, I only started on Tuesday in here. And in a secret bunker location of Fife. Talking of secret bunkers, I was at a gig in the secret bunker in Fife, believe it or not. And it was Sonic Boom, the guy that used to be in Spaceman 3 with Jason Pierce. I done a secret gig in a secret bunker. But when you're driving up to the secret bunker, there's a road sign. saying secret bunker this way. So that secret.
The tourist attraction.
The St Andrews one, aye. Up there.
Yeah. I've been at that when I was a wee guy, yeah. See, just go back to St Roch's game, I must say thanks to Tony Cassidy, who came up to me and just introduced himself and then went, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "Oh, I need to get back into town. I'm going to Edinburgh." And he went, "Oh, I'll get you a lift." And he just gave me a lift into town. Like,
good man.
I met him for like 2 minutes and he gave me a lift into town. So thanks very much to Tony. And another Tony, the guy that took the pictures that you'll have seen online from the game, Tony Macalani.
Seen some brilliant pictures. Excellent images. Yeah.
That one,
John Hughes one that you shared.
Absolutely.
Atmosphere. How atmospheric was that, you know?
It was the light in the background and just his sort of almost silhouette with that strip on. It just looked brilliant. And he was really good, I thought, on Sunday.
How fit is he? Oh, he's so fit, by the way. Really fit. I know. Very, very fit. And I think the last time I seen him, he'd obviously been working out a fair bit in the gym, but what I've seen on the weekend is he's very lean. He goes cycling with John Collins. He does a lot of cycling with JC, who's obviously a big fitness fanatic as well. They're big mates, they two. They're like proper mates. But it's incredible to be in their presence because, you know, you look at them and think to yourself, I've paid to watch these guys, and they're just chewing the fat and having a wee bit of the buffet afterwards. It was great. And, you know, the comments that Brendan made about being in amongst Celtic people, that's another thing we were talking about earlier about the community aspect of it, JP. That feeling of being welcomed into the inner sanctum of a community or a group of people. And if you don't get that, and a lot of people don't until they go to the football, the supporters clubs, the bars, then it's going to affect their mental health. And this is a big thing that I don't think was actually considered during the pandemic in terms of football, the importance of football and the aftermath of getting fans back in the stadium. You know, I don't remember any of the politicians talking about it's good for the health mentally of the people. Let's talk about the game at the weekend. It's Sunday, JP. It's going to be exactly 1 year since VAR was introduced in Scottish football at Tynecastle for the 4-3 game, Celtic against Hearts, 22nd of October. And this weekend, Nick Walsh is the ref. Wasn't he the ref the last time? I think he was.
I remember watching it. I remember watching it in the Crown Creighton in the East End, which I think somebody heard me say on this show and came up for another game and a few months later and went into the wrong pub. Didn't go into the Crown Creighton, but went into I think it's the Alexandra bar, which is ill-advised to go in there with any sort of Celtic colours on or Celtic leniencies, because that's not a Celtic pub. Crown Creighton doesn't sound like a Celtic pub, but it is. Just FYI for future reference.
By the way,
I watched it in there.
JP, the gent, I don't know him personally, but I've followed him for ages. Celtic Bars, an amazing site online. There's so many people that do stuff that really help Celtic out. Like even like guys like Lil Z and all that does the videos on Twitter. I've seen that. Celtic Bars, the Celtic Wiki, all these guys that put in loads and loads of work into these various things, and he's writing a book about the CSCs, the history of the different clubs and all that kind of stuff. What an undertaking that must be. By the way, St. Roch's, I'm going to take this one, right? This is my fault, JP, right? After the game, there's certain things you look at and you think, right, it was the first game I've ever been involved in. And obviously we thought we'll do the live stream. Because what that does is that allows us to attract sponsorship, to allow us to put a team together and all that kind of stuff. And then you can have the sponsor's logo up on the screen and blah, blah, blah. So we went into it blind. We'd never done a live stream of a football game. We now have, which is great. But a few wee bits, one of which would be, it would be a good idea if the person organising that, i.e. me, gave the commentators team sheets with actual proper names and numbers on them. You guys never had that, right? No, what you were handed was an old programme that was printed a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
That's my fault.
I had Diddy Agat's name on it. And also, just a peek behind the curtain, James was taking the lead on the commentary and I was the Andy Walker to his Ian Crocker. I'm sure people would make their own assumptions with that, but I went away to try and find him a little table because he had his laptop. James was very prepared, by the way. He had notes on his phone, everything like that. and he had what he thought was the correct numbers next to players on his laptop. And I don't think that was obviously, well, clearly it wasn't correct. But he had that sat down on a couple of bags, like stacked up next to him, and was having to like watch the game and then look down at his screen to check the name of a player. So it wasn't easy.
And that was my fault. I'm going to take that one on the chin. Because I should have had you guys with at least the right teams. And there was a team list that was in the dressing room. I should have been able to get that to
you. It made it quite difficult that Celtic players were all wearing the same number.
Number 7 on the top, 10 on the shot. Because I remember like 2 minutes before kickoff, that's what James said to me. He was like, "Aye, can you give us the numbers?" I says, "Aye, they're all wearing number 10. Great." Right. The game then at the weekend, the tagline obviously is talking about one of the areas of the park up for grabs, but we'll take it from the back and work our way through. JP, I'm looking at maybe a dilemma or maybe not. Centre half positions for me are a stick on. You stick with Carter Vickers and Scales. I know that Nawrocki's training again. Welsh is going to start training in January, I think Rodgers said the other day. Phillips is fit. Lagerbielke's fit, and he's played games internationally, scored a goal. You don't drop Scales. You play it on form, and you play those two guys.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't. Why would you break up a winning defence partnership? It's the same with Carter Vickers and Starfelt. People were so desperate all the time for Starfelt to be jettisoned from the team, but you had the centre half pairing that were a winning centre half pairing. They didn't lose a league game whilst they played together. I'm pretty sure that's the statistic.
That's right. Yeah, right. Incredible statistic.
So the last game, we got 3 points. Yes, we conceded a goal. Did we deserve to concede that goal? Probably not. It was a foul on Greg Taylor, which I think is widely acknowledged. So no, Scales doesn't deserve to be dropped. Carter Vickers is obviously has to be playing to get back to a level of fitness ahead of the Atletico Madrid game. You play your centre halves that you're going to play in that game. You would imagine that he would play Carter Vickers and Scales in that game. Scales has played both Champions League games so far, has done nothing really to warrant being dropped for the third one. So that would definitely be my centre back pairing, and the left back, right back picks itself as well.
I agree with that. And obviously the goalkeeper, I know that we've been linked. I don't know how tenuous the links are, JP, to another goalkeeper and Andre Lunin, but when you look at the wages he must be on, we were talking about that yesterday with Paddy Sinnott, who's written about it. It doesn't look as though it could be a goer. Even on a loan deal, it's going to be very expensive. But what I do like about it is that's the type of age profile that we should be looking at to bring a goalie in, probably about the age of 24, so that if Hart gets another season at Celtic, then there's a transition, there's a crossover, and we can take it from there. But yeah, you're right. Right back, left back, definitely picks himself. We've not been talking much about Taylor because he's back to form. He's got back to that kind of Greg Taylor level that we expected. But what has happened, JP, is Bernabe's fallen off the radar. He's not even making the bench at the moment. Is that a position for you that come January, you've got to move him on because it's clearly not worked? You move him on. He's been an expensive buy, something around the figure of £3 and £3.75 million, I think he cost us. But it's just not worked out. You move him on, you bring in another left back. Would you be up for that, or do you still think we might get a tune out of him?
Well, I think you've got to look at what's happened in his personal life. He's a young father, isn't he? He's got a baby, a relatively recent baby. Maybe he's struggling with that, and him and his partner are struggling with that. Maybe they need the support from their family. Maybe a move closer to home after having such a huge thing happen in your life. I know from friends of mine who've had children, their parents have been massive in their lives, and if both their parents aren't around them, they may well be, and if so, then
great point
talking nonsense. But parents around your life at that point in time are probably huge, and maybe his focus isn't fully on football when it obviously that's his job, it needs to be, but the reality is that his life's changed massively by moving here in the first place, and also then by having a child. So that might be part of the reason that he's been kind of left out of things. And Brendan Rodgers has obviously alluded to the fact that there's work to be done there on the player, whether that happens at Celtic or elsewhere, I don't know. But for us, selfishly, we need to think about what's happening with us in the short term, and he obviously needs to look at what's happening with him in the short term as well, and whether or not a move back home to be surrounded by that family unit might be. I mean, again, a complete speculation on my part. I don't know anything other than you or anybody knows about him. But I think if he's not getting in squads and stuff like that, you've got to be a bit concerned, especially if he's fit.
Yeah.
He seems like a nice guy. He seems like a popular guy within the dressing room. You see the reaction when he scored that goal recently, and was it recently? I can't even.
In the friendly, remember the friendly where he ran and ran and ran.
Yeah,
he chased his own ball, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. But I just don't. I don't think there's any sort of animosity towards him from within the squad or anything like that. I think he seems to be quite a popular person, but ultimately he needs to play football somewhere, and we've paid £3.5-4 million for him. So if we're not getting football out of him, then we better going somewhere else to play.
You raised a good point, though, JP, because as football fans, we think about performances, and if somebody's had a bad game or a run of bad games, you think about that. You don't then consider all the other elements. And I know that some of the South Korean concerns about the players that we brought in could well be that they've not settled. You sign a player, you talk about, and he's compared to Giakoumakis, and we've heard a lot of that over the last couple of weeks, but nobody actually says, but he was coming over from South Korea on his own. Early 20s. You imagine that in real life terms, JP, that's a difficult thing for anybody to do. It doesn't matter because they're a footballer that they don't have emotions or the same kind of settling in periods. And that's maybe why Yang, for example, hasn't hit the ground running as much as maybe Palma, who we'll be talking about when we get to the wings. But it is a good point with Bernabé. Most people do rely for a period on the in-laws or your parents to help you with the wee one coming up. And obviously, they've not had that luxury either, haven't they? And there was a death in the family as well. Yes, totally get all that. And that's maybe why he's dropped out the squad. And it's the same with James McCarthy, whose name is mentioned a lot on the show. You don't really know what the personal circumstances are behind the scenes, behind the curtain, JP. So it's important to bring that up. Now, Daft Gav, gents, many thanks for what you do, and long may it continue. Came across Acsom during the lockdown and have followed ever since. The Thursday show is always my favourite. Well, Gav, thank you for your kind words. It helped us during lockdown as well. Gave me a right good structure to my day. And for everybody who is mentioning the greyness and the boring nature of my environment, I am going to jazz it. I'm going to get neon lights and all that now, JP. I wasn't going to do that before. I'm going to get a big neon Acsom sign on the back there, as if we've walked into a bar in New York or something. Giggsy the Poet, Kevin Graham. Afternoon, lads and lassies, all work and no play this week. Yes, as long as it doesn't make you a dull boy, Kev. And obviously you'll be welcome back in when you're available. Estepona boy, I used to go to away games from Benny's Bar, Gorbals Cross. Anyone remember it? Let us know in the comment section. And by the way, some great comments coming through. 700 strong on the Thursday live stream. St. Roch's, big shout out also to Scott and Tommy for their photos as well as Tony. 3 top guys. There's about 500 pictures actually in the galleries. Check out St. Roch's on the social media. They've got the links on there. Brilliant images of, I think every player gets photographed. And by the way, I can say for a fact, the players are buzzing about the game, JP, because obviously I sent them the galleries that St. Roch's are talking about. I sent them that on net, and they're coming back to us. They loved it. They loved the jerseys the whole day. It was genuine. It was genuinely a brilliant day. And Tony Cassidy comes in to say it was an honour to give you a run up the road as well. Plunge McNugget. Next time you're at James McGrory Park, give the village of Blackhill a visit down the road. Listen, I've been to Blackhill. I have been down to Blackhill. A good friend of mine comes from that area. I've been there, and Pete McGee, John Collins was very unpopular for suggesting back then that Scottish players were generally really unfit, but he was right. I think Collins was one of these guys, JP, that maximised everything in his career. A big part of that was down to diet, fitness, and that kind of approach. But it was a culture at that time whereby a lot of the Scottish players didn't really buy into that. We've seen examples of it, haven't we? Even like under Ronnie Dyler, where he wanted the players to be 24/7 athletes and all this kind of stuff. And there was an element of that squad who weren't really into that. And I think it's difficult if it's part of the culture. You know, looking back to when we started bringing in a lot of Scandinavian players, you know, Sweden and Norway and Denmark, and they had a different approach to the game to the Scottish lads who might have enjoyed a few more bevies, let's just say, and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's embedded in the culture of Scotland. So it's very difficult for a player, I think, from this country to then completely change the mindset. I remember when, for example, when Graham Souness went over to Sampdoria and the change in lifestyle there, he tried to implement that when he came back to Scotland, and there was a lot of resistance to the diet and all that. If you can imagine, in the kind of mid to late 80s, JP, Scottish footballers were thinking, what are you doing? We run all the badness we eat and drink during the week, we run it off at training, and it doesn't really work like that, especially now with the athletic nature of the game. The tagline, Palma must start for Brendan Rodgers. The reason I'm saying it, JP, is we've brought in 3 wingers after the departure of Jota. Tillio's not played, so we can't pass judgment on him. Yang, I think...
It does exist, by the way. Was it Paddy Lavery said this?
Yeah.
Tillio does exist. I saw him, I walked past him in Botanic Gardens, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Marco Tillio, and I Google imaged him, and I was like, yep, that's him. So he does exist.
Is he quite a wee guy?
Aye, he's quite wee, yeah.
Quite a wee guy, because I think Palma's got a good physicality about him, and he was named in the international team of the week. He's doing well with Honduras, and I think he's impression that he's made.
He's got to start. There's no, there's not even a question. Like, Maeda seems to be AWOL, probably with injury. He's not in the Japan squad. I don't know if anything's been mentioned about him. Maybe there'll be something mentioned about him tomorrow or today. But Palma starts definitely. He looks really dangerous now, and has got an appreciation of what a goal means for Celtic and how that feels. So once you've tasted it, you want more, and he's definitely capable of it. And the other side, I would start James Forrest. I
said that the other day, right, JP, and my rationale behind it, I don't know, tell me what you think. My rationale behind it is your other options are the likes of Yang, who I think had a bit of a stop-start, and I think he was spooked at Fir Park because the fans thought he had dived, didn't they? The Motherwell fans, they got on his back and he was hooked at half-time. I don't think the Tynecastle environment is going to, for me, be conducive to him putting in a good performance. And by the way, I caveat that by saying it shouldn't matter. If you sign for Celtic, you need to deal with a toxic environment at Ibrox or Tynecastle or wherever we go. But I think Forrest has been through that so many times as a player under Rodgers that I think this is a type of game that Rodgers will start Forrest. There's not going to be many games. It wouldn't surprise me if over the season he starts 12 games, JP. But this is the type of game under these circumstances I play Forrest. I know what I'm getting from him.
Well, he started against Livingston and then had to be hooked because of the red card. So he's not really had another opportunity since then to sort of not redeem himself, but like to have another opportunity to play and show what he can still offer to the side, because I'm desperate for him to show what he can offer to the side, just purely to shut so many people up, because so many people seem to be willing him not to do well. And I just think he's a waste of a jersey, and the disrespect shown to him is staggering, really, to be honest. And people will be like, oh, what's he done in the last few seasons and all the rest of it? And it's like, well, we've had a pretty good side, first 11, I mean, you're not going to get in ahead of a guy that's just gone to Saudi Arabia for 25 million, who's got 10 years on you, or 9 years on you, whatever it is. So there's been plenty of people ahead of him who've been doing the business. And obviously quite a lot of that time he's been unfit with an injury. And then some of that time he's been fit, but he's just not been able to get in. Sunday's an opportunity for him to get in, and I would love him to get in and do some damage. Should have had a penalty last season in the corresponding fixture, which we all remember well in the first VAR game. So
yeah,
I hope we're not talking about VAR after the game on Sunday. I hope we're talking about a professional job on a team and a club who none of us have really got much time for, have we?
Not got much love for them, JP, let's be honest. I'm going to leave everybody with one final comment. 700 strong on a Thursday bulletin. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, everybody who then watches on the catch-up. Actually, 12:30 was brilliant during the pandemic in terms of getting the audience, because most people were at home. 12:30 now, everybody's working. So it's most people watch on the catch-up. So get into the comment section. Let us know about all the discussion points today. Final point, JP, we started with music. We're going to finish with music. And do Hallow LP, I know for a fact you're smiling because you're well aware of Fontaine's DC, JP. And I'm pretty sure you'll agree they are well worth a listen, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. One of the best new bands in the last 10, 20 years, in my opinion. I just think they're great, and I've loved them since seeing them at Tuts and watched them gradually get up to bigger venues. And they've been over in America supporting Arctic Monkeys and huge venues over in the States. So I've been watching that unravel, and I'm sure they've won over a lot of new fans over there as well, and probably go back and play to much bigger venues the next time they tour themselves as a headliner.
And didn't they sponsor Bohemians Football Club?
They did. I'd quite like to get that top, but I think it's impossible to get now. But we got them Celtic tops when they played the Barrowland, which
Brilliant.
they still wear, which is really cool. We need to get them new ones next time they come back.
That's why I love having people like you out and about, and you see it from the likes of Gianni Capaldi as well. Wherever he's working with a big Hollywood superstar, he makes sure he gets them a Celtic strip or a scarf or something Celtic related.
Yeah, but some of that's a little bit contrived. Where you see like Robert De Niro, not Robert De Niro. You see Robert Downey Jr. standing there, kind of like he's been forced to wear a Celtic top with a bit of a kind of grimace in his face. Fontaine's DC are actually all mad Celtic fans, and like made a point of going to the Brazen Head before their gigs at the Academy and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's a definite, and their manager Trevor as well, massive Celtic fan, massive champion of justice as well within the world. So they've got a good mentor there in him.
Yeah, definitely. And just a wee bit of football, music and politics on a Celtic State of Mind here on a Thursday afternoon. I'm pretty sure you'd be disappointed if you didn't hear all of the above. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. Get us followed on the YouTube channel, subscribe. It's all free, obviously. And give us a big thumbs up as well on this particular video. We'll be back at 12:30 tomorrow for all the pre-match chat. All that's left for me to say, John Paul Mason, thank you for joining me on a Celtic State of